what you want. How to position yourself ahead of the crowd. It was not exactly what I expected. Oh, it certainly was a great adventure. I didn't get paid as much as I normally do, but some of the best rewards in life are not necessarily financial. But without a doubt, the highlight of my 3-week speaking tour of South Africa was the weekend we went to the game park. Now, it's not at all like a zoo, and even though you get covered in dust from head to foot, it's hardly roughing it. The trekkers had been out for an hour by the time I got up for my 6:30 a.m. cafe au lait. We bundled up in layers of clothes and we went out in these big high jeeps to see the animals. And they were just as magnificent as you would imagine. We saw the elephants, the rhinos, the zebra, the giraffe, the ostrich. I felt a little guilty about the ostrich. We'd eaten one of his relations for dinner a couple of nights before. But what I found most surprising, when these animals stood perfectly still, you could hardly see them. They were camouflaged. Now, that didn't surprise me with the elephants or animals who were all one color. But something as distinctive as a zebra. And on reflection, I realized what keeps them alive in their jungle can get us eaten alive in ours. Although at times it might be appropriate to fade into the background, if you want to position yourself ahead of the crowd, you have to be noticed, distinctive, and memorable. Now, it doesn't matter what leadership position you are in, you need to be noticed. You need to be remembered. Now, I am frequently asked, how do I know what I want for my life or my career? We understand what you speakers tell us. Write down your goals, make them challenging, make them attainable, make them measurable, make them co-authored. But how on earth do I know what I want? And if you do not know exactly what you want, don't panic, you're like most people. What I encourage people to do, if they want to get what they want, what I encourage people to do if they want to position themselves ahead of the crowd is think about everything they don't want and work backwards. If you looked exactly the way you do right now in 1 year's time, would that thrill you? Would you throw a party, invite your friends around to see how good you look? If not, what are you going to do? There are people that can help you improve every part of your appearance. If you felt the same way you do right now in 12 months, is that thrilling? If not, what are you going to do? There is so much about lifestyle choices that can make us feel better. If you had the same quality relationships in 1 year as you do now, is that great? If not, what communication skills are you going to have to use or learn? Or where are you going to meet more supportive people? If your career took the same natural progression as it is now, would you be where you want to be in 1 year? If not, what do you have to learn? Who do you have to get on your side? Who do you have to communicate with? Now, if you want to get what you want in your life, if you want to position yourself ahead of the crowd, think big, start small. You have to understand the difference between a goal and a fantasy. A goal is something you know what tiny steps you can take every day to get closer to it. A fantasy is something you just sit in a bubble bath and dream about. This is very profound. You are going to want to write this down. To get what you want in your life, to position yourself ahead of the crowd, two things. Get started, never stop. See, people get so excited, but everything, the energy peters out. Get started, don't stop. Now, a lot of people have so many different options, they don't know where to start. My friend Wendy gave me advice early in my career that has made it very easy for me to make decisions. Early on, I had two choices. Do I work with this company or that company? And I said, Wendy, I want to make the right decision. She said, Patricia, the energy and enthusiasm you put into everything, you'll make either successful. Now that gave insight, but it also took a lot of pressure off. You can change your direction, but you have to get started. Now, to position yourself ahead of the crowd, you have to look the part of the person you want to be. To get what you want in life, you have to look the part of someone getting what you want. I obviously am not going to give you a Dress for Success seminar. But you know, image consultants for years have told us to dress for the job we want, not the one we have. The first time I worked with an image consultant to get my business wardrobe together, I turned up at an NSA convention. I was walking up on stage to get an award. And an association exec, a meeting planner, someone who pays speakers, leaned towards one of my friends and said, you can see Patricia makes over $250,000 a year. You can tell by the way she's dressed. Now, at that point, I didn't. But you get there a lot faster when people who pay you and take you there think you're already doing it. And part of looking is not only how you dress, but successful people exude energy. When people say to you, how are you? Don't say, all right. When people say to me, how are you? I usually say, I feel so good. Never felt so good in all my life. I say, I feel so good you wouldn't believe it. People respond to you the way you put out. And whether they are pumping your gas, checking you in at an airline counter, or writing you a paycheck, when people consider you a pleasure to be around, that's almost like money in the bank. To position yourself ahead of the crowd, you have to speak the part. Now you're probably thinking, well, Patricia, it's all right for you to say you are a public speaker. Outside of the privacy of our own home, all speaking is public speaking. There is no such thing as private speaking. Now, when I stand on stage, I get paid. But do you realize if you went up to somebody at the cheese dip at the Chamber of Commerce mixer and started a conversation and you do business with that person, that 10-minute public speech could be worth more to you than me standing on stage speaking to 9,000 people? Don't tell me it isn't a public speech that is paid. In a company, if you get into the elevator and suddenly see the chairman of the board, you have 30 seconds to give a speech that can help your long-term career. Now, most people say, when I get in the elevator, if I meet the chairman of the board, I don't know what to say. Isn't it better to have something to say and never meet him or her than meet him or her and not think of anything to say? Profound stuff. But imagine if you get in the elevator, you suddenly see the chairman of the board, and you go and say, well, hello, Mr. Smith. I'm Patricia Fripp. I met you at the company party. I'm in the meeting planning department. Did you know we saved the company $250,000 last quarter? Oh, here's my floor. That is a public speech that can help your long-term career. You think big, you start small. See, in getting what you want in life, in positioning yourself ahead of the crowd, it's the tiny, everyday activity that gets you closer. That's all part of the goal. Get started, don't stop. Now, when we speak, you have to learn to handle the details, but report on the deals. I had a secretary, Maggie, very sweet, nice, wonderful young lady, dedicated, but she drove me crazy. We would do a mailing. I said, Maggie, was that successful? Oh, very. How many did we sell? A lot. I said, Maggie, bottom line. Bottom line, how many pieces did we mail? What was the cost? What was the return? What is your recommendation? She's not working with me anymore because she handled the details. But you really get paid when you have the overview. You look at the deals. Young lady who knew this, used to work for me, now has another job. She is the executive director of an association that's going through a tough time. She literally has to justify her existence. I said, Becky, do you send reports to your board of directors? She said, yes. I said, let me see one. She said, sent 20 faxes. I said, remember what I taught you? Handle the details, report on the deals. What you actually did was not send 20 faxes. You personally invited 20 Ford dealers to hear our Ford speaker. 14 people attended at a profit of so much to our association. Yes, you have to handle the details, but how you justify your position and position yourself ahead of the crowd is the bottom line, report on the deals. You position yourself ahead of the crowd by dealing from strength. Strength is who you are and who you are perceived to be. I have a friend, Judy Mario. She used to be in the convention and special event business in Las Vegas. Burton Cohen, who was the general manager of the Desert Inn under Howard Hughes, once said, if you want the possible done, you can hire anybody. If you want the impossible done, you have to call Judy Mario. Now, do you understand when people think that about you? You are positioned ahead of the crowd. There is no competition. When people think this about you, you can get what you want because there is no competition. Now, doing the impossible isn't really doing the impossible. It's just doing things that other people think they can't do. I was sitting next to a gentleman on an airplane. He said, I had to deliver an 18-page dull report. I went to a young lady in our publicity department and said, help. She took the 18 pages, she added graphs, cartoons, diagrams, and made this a really fun, interesting to listen to report. The president of the company was so impressed. Not only has she received worldwide recognition from doing the impossible, making an 18-page report interesting, everybody who has to present any type of presentation that's important has to run it by her before they present it, whether it's internal or external. You see, you position yourself ahead of the crowd by being noticed. Now, you have to do things to be noticed where there sometimes appears to be no payback. You see, what you are and how you're perceived to be is your values and your ethics and your everyday habits. This same gentleman on the plane told me I completed my project with the company. And I fortunately was in a pretty good position. I could take my time getting my next assignment. I went to a woman in Atlanta who helps people position themselves and package themselves so they can get their next job. And I wanted to go into another industry. I had no experience, so I really needed her help. We worked together for 4 months. The first time around, I was their second choice. Didn't get the job. That first person didn't work out, so they called me. I love my job. This position is fabulous. And I was surprised because the woman didn't send me a bill. And when I telephoned and asked about it, she said, "You don't remember who I am, do you?" She said, 9 years ago, my husband lost his job. He'd worked for that company for 15 years and he was so depressed he was almost suicidal. You interviewed him for a job. You didn't have one. But you took the time to call somebody else and set up an interview and follow up to make sure he got it. He's worked there for 9 years and he's very happy. This one's on me. See, when you do things with no payback, there's always a payback. My friend Carol Kelby sold well over an average of $1 million a month in the real estate industry in a slow market in a very low price area. I stayed with her a couple of years ago and I said, "Kelby, I've heard these stories about you for years, but how did you actually do it?" She said, "One night I had an appointment with the gentleman. I was listing his home. He found the next one he wanted and he was buying it directly from the builder. So I had no commission in that transaction. And I was working the numbers every which way I could. And I found if he paid me a commission, he was not going to qualify for his loan." She said, you're going to have to sell your house yourself. Get a pen, I'll tell you how to do it." He said, "Carol, why would you tell me how to do it? You won't make any money." And listen to what she said. She said, "It's the cost of doing business. You don't get paid for everything you do." Next morning he called her. He said, "Carol, do you know what I do?" She said, "Yes, you work in personnel with this big company." He said, "No, I'm in charge of personnel. We have just merged with another company. We will be hiring 3,000 more people. Many of them will be relocating. And they're all yours." She said, "At the time I thought, what if he's lying and only sends me 100? See, your strength is who you are, who you're perceived to be, and who is on your side, your sphere of influence. People who think well of you. That's money in the bank. And that can be as simple as you have to be everybody's favorite customer. I make sure we pay all our bills at the end of every week, unless it's an entrepreneur, a small business person. They get paid immediately because we think they need the money. Because you understand, sometimes you're a small customer to someone, but if you pay your bills fast, you can be their best customer. I never put people under pressure. When they say to me, "When do you need this ready?" I say, "When can you comfortably have it ready?" And then on the rare occasions I have an emergency to serve one of my customers, they will drop everything and look after me because they know that's not part of my planning or how I run my business. Also, there are many people on your side that can get results you couldn't yourself. When I was a hairstylist, one of my clients was a heavy-duty, very prestigious attorney. And I had a problem. I went to small claims court and sued my attorney and won. But winning in small claims court and collecting the money is a very different thing. So I said, Haig, I really need you to do me a favor. Can you write a letter to this guy? Now you understand, he didn't care if this little hairstylist went around town and said he was a flake. But he didn't want the high power attorney to be in a position to say, this guy's a flake. He said, dear Maurice, this is very embarrassing. I represent Patricia on this matter. We look forward to hearing from you. I got my money by return mail. If I'd been trying to collect myself, I'd still be waiting. Your sphere of influence is your good customers. People you can say, Patricia Fripp suggested that I call. People who are on your side. Now you're probably thinking, well, Patricia, it's all right for you to say. You can position yourself ahead of the crowd. You can get what you want. When you think about what you want, when you get started and don't stop, when you look the part, speak the part, and negotiate from strength. But you're an author, you're a speaker, you're successful. But you have to understand, it's not where you start, it's where you end up. Now, I started, as many of you know, in England. I have a brother who is 1 year, 1 month, 2 days, 12 and a half hours younger than I am. Not that I'm counting. He was one of these kids who was always top of the class, always number one. For me, it was an effort. It was a struggle to be about 15th in a class of 30. I thought I better not goof off. I realized very young, to compete, I have to develop good work habits. I never missed school. I received 100% attendance certificates for years. I never won anything else, but they knew I always turned up. Now, those good habits helped me when I went to work at 15 to become an apprentice to be a ladies' hairstylist. And when you're an apprentice, you sweep up and pass pins and go shopping for the stylists. And on a Tuesday evening, we would practice on models. We would do people's hair for very little amount of money. Now, I naturally expected all these other girls are going to be a lot more talented than I am, so I better practice more. On a Tuesday evening, when all the other girls would do 1 or 2 models, I would do 5. And every weekend and every evening, I'd practice on the neighbor's hair. So naturally, I progressed a lot faster. At 18, I left home and went to work on an island off France called Jersey. And I worked in this chic salon with gentlemen from the West End of London. They could do hairstyles I'd never even seen before. You know something? They thought lunch hours were for eating lunch. Can you believe that? See, we all know lunch hours are for squeezing in 3 extra customers. One day my boss told me I actually produced 30% more income for the salon than the stylists who were more talented, more experienced. Not by being better, but always trying to serve my customers, do a little bit more, do a little bit more, and have good work habits. So where to exploit this? The colonies. So I arrived in America at 20, no job, nowhere to live, $500, but I knew 2 things about this magnificent country. Everyone in America was rich, and the streets were paved with movie stars. Well, my first job was at the Mark Hopkins Hotel in San Francisco, working in the beauty salon, and I got to meet movie stars. But I found an amazing thing about this country. Hairstylists get paid 100% on commission. No guarantee, no sick pay, no vacation pay, 100% commission. And to me, this was a license to steal. My boss had never seen anyone work the way I did. He said, Patricia, go back to England, bring over 28 of your friends, and I will become a multi-millionaire. I thought, and I said, Charles, I don't know anybody who wants to work the way I do. My next job, I became one of the first women to do men's hairstyling when it was a new industry. And I worked very hard, had some good teachers, and I became a star stylist, very well known in San Francisco. I was the only woman in the salon, so that gave me extra visibility and publicity. Then another young lady, Judy, came to join us, and I realized for her it was probably a bit uncomfortable because I was so obviously the star. But I tried to get her involved in everything I did. I gave her all my overflow business, which was considerable. And one day a gentleman from K101 Radio came to talk to me to see if I could fill an hour radio talk show. Did he find out? And I said, Judy, come talk to him, give him your opinions of what it's like being a woman doing men's hair. And the three of us were talking, and then he said, Patricia, you have been very successful. Do people in your industry resent your success? Without a moment's hesitation, I said, well, of course not. Why would they resent my success? They see I work 6 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, every night go out, pass out business cards. In exactly the same moment, Judy said, well, yes, of course they resent her success. You know, her words hit me between the eyes. I suddenly realized at age 25, I was no longer working hard to keep up. I was now ahead of the crowd. But even more important, I realized if I was going to live up to just a small portion of my potential, I could not be concerned what people think about me who are less ambitious than I was. I made the conscious choice, if I was going to position myself ahead of the crowd, not only did I have to look the part, speak the part, and negotiate from strength, I had to develop exceptionally good work habits and associate with other movers and shakers in my industry and others, even if I was a little intimidated being around them. A few years ago, I met a very famous newscaster. And she told us advice that had been given to her at the beginning of her career by a real star in the industry. At that point, she'd got a job when the networks were really forced to hire women. And they gave her a lot of piddly assignments that weren't worth much. And this superstar said to her, take every crumb they throw you and handle them magnificently. See, that's thinking big, but starting small. That's doing things you're not paid for. That's having a goal, something you can work towards. That isn't a fantasy. That's certainly developing exceptionally good work habits. Let's summarize. If you want to position yourself ahead of the crowd, if you don't know what you want, think about everything you don't want and work backwards. Understand the difference between a goal and a fantasy is with a goal, there are tiny steps you can take each day to get closer to that goal. A fantasy is something you just sit in the bubble bath and dream about. You have to look the part of the person you want to be and the life you want to have. You have to speak the part. Remember, all speaking is public speaking. Strength comes from who you are perceived to be, and who is on your side. And finally, remember, It's not where you start out in life, but it's where you end up.